Good evening, Malaysia and followers from around the world. The Pandora Papers has unmasked the hidden owners of offshore companies, secret accounts of government figures, including 35 world leaders, current and former presidents, prime ministers, and head of states, as well as over 100 billionaires, including politicians, judges, royalties, celebrities from over 50 countries. Famous names included King Salman of Saudi Arabia, Elton John, Shakira, Julio Iglesias, and almost every elite in the world. Thanks to the hard work of the International Consortium of Investigative Journalists. Many people have read about this news, but not many people are aware what does it mean by these offshore companies and is it legal or illegal? So they have very little understanding. Joining us tonight is Mr. Koong Loong, who's a very experienced and prominent chartered accountant. He appears in the media regularly. The media seek his views on many issues. Koong is the managing partner of Reanda LLKG International. He's also the chairman of the Finance and Planning Committee and the chairman of the SMEs Committee at the Association of Chinese Chamber of Commerce and Industry Malaysia. Welcome, sir.
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, let's get it started our conversation. Can you tell us what does offshore accounts, what are they, and why do individuals and companies open such accounts?
I feel that offshore account is just a normal account. If you mention offshore, then you will definitely recall a word called onshore. Onshore means that if I'm in this Malaysia, I open up an account, is it in my jurisdiction, then it's onshore account. If I open an account outside Malaysia, let's say in Singapore or in Hong Kong, then it is an offshore account. That means out of your jurisdictions where you are as a resident. That's my basic understanding to explain what you mentioned just now. Yeah.
Okay, so most Malaysians, ordinary people, they have a savings account and a current account. So these are considered like inshore accounts. Now, if I were to open an account in UK, for example, for my children to study, would that be considered offshore accounts already?
I think it's offshore. If I can say my children study, let's say in UK, easy for the let's say accommodations or expenses, daily expenses over there. If I open up a UK in London, there's an account. That is an offshore account. However, a lot of people are confused. If you open up an account in a Malaysia bank over here onshore, then you have onshore local currency. You also can have onshore foreign currency. That is quite different.
Okay. The only difference, of course, is that these are not the ordinary accounts that one will open for their children to have an account overseas or to buy some property, say in London or other parts of Australia, for example. But here we're talking about accounts in places like Canary Islands, Virgin Islands, where many of these rich people would not want their assets to be known. Why these particular areas? Canary Islands, Virgin Islands. Why these places?
I think it's from the historical event. Those days, for instance, if you want to buy an asset in London, just now as you mentioned, RealChunWai, let's say if I open up an account in London, easy for the rental collections, or I use the rental collections to pay the loan installment. That's totally fine. If you mentioned just now the Virgin Island, BVI, and then if not forgetting the Cayman Island, all those things, those are the very, I think it's a very historical and then very long known to us as a jurisdictions. All these, I also feel strange, always associated with the island. Only island will do all these things like a James Bond movie. But if it's not island, like other jurisdiction, it also is offshore, like UAE, all those things. It is become much more complicated and comprehensive nowadays. If you open an account, to me, is totally fine. If you want to open an account with a specific purpose, definitely it's legitimate and legalized.
But Mr. Ko, there must be some advantages that
Definitely,
these
definitely. The advantages is if I open up just now, as I mentioned, if I open up a UK currency pound account in UK, I'm not worried about the fluctuations of the currency, So I can receive the rental incomes in a pound, then I pay the installment in pound sterling, But on the other angle, you can also get a Malaysia ringgit loan as well to hedge against the pound. See which of this hedging process that you are good at, you can do that as well. However, if you let's say if you buy a property in Malaysia, let's say onshore, let's say in Malaysia, Kuala Lumpur, that means you are known because you have to pay stamp duty. You go to legal office, the lawyer office, you sign the S&P agreement. That means you are known. You are known to the local authority. You have this asset.
I see.
If you, let's say you are offshore, this one with the benefit of doubt, if you don't disclose to anybody, I think nobody will know. Only the jurisdiction, I said the offshore jurisdiction will know that you have bought this asset. But the offshore bank, let's say in UK, they will not automatically, let's say, they report to your own onshore jurisdiction, let's say in Malaysia. Definitely later we're going to discuss a lot of changes happening nowadays in respect of country by country reporting, all those things. That was the history until now.
I see. Now, we mentioned about all these islands we mentioned. Okay. In these islands, they set up this kind of facilities. Okay. Is it because that this is one way? Most of these islands, they may not have any form of revenue. And that is this kind of banking, the facilities, is it a way for them to help them in the economy and to earn something for themselves?
Definitely, because all these islands, you look at BBI, Cayman Island, whatsoever, they set up all these things. Just like recently, we see the Caribbean island, Nevis, all those things. The setup is to attract a lot of high net worth, high net worth to comes into this particular island, So to have the accounts, all those things, then you will buy the property or whatsoever asset over there, then they will earn. Now they will have this so-called inverted comma foreign direct investment to them, even though you are a high net worth, not a company. Obviously, you will set up a company over there. You may want to pay the fees, management fees, or incorporation fees, some things like that. Definitely increase their income.
I see.
Yeah.
So to have an account there, it's just merely to have an account, or you need to set up a company to deal with such accounts?
I think you can have an account. Not necessarily the company. To set up a company, offshore company and offshore account is a totally different thing. Just now, Junwai, you mentioned, what for I set up there? I think there are basically a few advantages also. That's how you say secrecy. Some other jurisdiction may not know, Another one is a very good, is a tax planning, So because some country they have an inheritance tax. If I set up there, I also may set up offshore trust. That's why you see this sort of island, a lot of so-called trust company, a lot of legal firms, Then they will draft this agreement to set up the trust. To set up the trust, I put my asset into the trust. Actually, I'm not transferring. That's why I don't have any whatsoever transfer tax or inheritance tax. Then who are the beneficiary? Maybe the beneficiary my children, you see, but it's not transferred to the children. There is no inheritance tax or whatsoever. So I think it's a good way of tax planning if there is a loophole in such some things like that.
I think the reality is that every taxpayer, whether you're those that are in the middle class, upper class, or this super rich, everybody will try to find a way to pay less tax. It is not evasion of tax, but pay less tax. That's why we are forever looking for relief, right? Small little relief for us who are poor taxpayers. But of course, for this super rich, they will look much more than what the ordinary people like us would look for. Now, we mentioned all these islands already, but there are now many competition. I was reading as part of this program research. It is said that Panama, UAE, United Arab Emirates, and even this place is South Dakota in the US, which have become as a tax haven for this. When all this competition take place, for these billionaires, what would they choose? It would seem that from the Panama Papers, Cayman Islands and Virgin Islands seems to be still their preference. So from a accountant, how would one choose? Okay, I mean, there's so many players, so many tax havens all over now. How would one decide, and how would one recommend their clients to look for?
Actually, it depends on the purpose. For instance, just now we mentioned, if you mention Singapore, Cayman Island, PBI, Panama, or actually we watched movie long ago also for Switzerland, Swiss account, Swiss account, I always mentioned about Swiss account is very secretive, You look at this. If Singapore, actually all these jurisdictions, they have their own identity. This is a very specific identity. Let's say Singapore, they always attract this high net worth, private. They always call it private banking. It's one of the biggest private banking in the world. And then the Cayman Island always is an offshore investment account. There's no direct tax there, and then no tax on the capital gain, and then no withholding tax, no property tax. Also, no exchange control. You can freely in and out like Cayman Island. PBI is always the place for people to set up the offshore investment company. Offshore. They always set up a holding company. That's why PBI lately a lot of people talk about Cayman. Also Cayman. For instance, if you list a company in Malaysia IPO, you don't see this sort of thing. If you look at all the prospectus in the Hong Kong IPO, they are almost identical. They incorporate a Hong Kong company listed, but the Hong Kong company is not listed. It's not a vehicle for the IPO. But on top there is a PBI. On top of PBI, there is a Cayman Island. So the Cayman Island listed in the Hong Kong. Now, why is it like that? Because I think it is good for this taxation planning. If you transfer your share in the Cayman Island, it won't attract any tax at all in whatever jurisdictions. Like Panama, Panama is good for account, very comprehensive account. You can open up whatever banking account in Panama, all those things. That's why you can see Panama, the long list in the Panama account. I think a lot of all these things is a specific identity, but they are doing the same, but they have the specific advantages and identity. Yeah, some things like that. Yeah.
You mentioned about the rich not wanting people to know their wealth. Has over the years, do you think that the Switzerland has lost its charm and a place for confidentiality and secrecy? Because now less and less people mention about Swiss account compared maybe 10 years or 20 years ago.
Definitely. After I read all this whatsoever, last time you got Paradise paper, Panama paper, now Pandora paper, all those things. You look at the Swiss has lost the limelight definitely, as what we heard those days. But Switzerland now is very good in the asset protection as well. They are very good in trust, not only the account. That means to open up the offshore account, it becomes a very normal. It's a norm, even the offshore everywhere. Each country, when they have low jurisdictions, like Hong Kong and Singapore. You see, Hong Kong and Singapore actually is like this. It's an English, British, this system, taxation system. We are not a worldwide tax scope. You only tax on the territorial basis. That means you only earn on the onshore, then you'll be taxed. If you set up a company, let's say in Hong Kong, if you earn something offshore, totally not taxable. Totally not taxable, unlike US and China, totally not taxable. You do not need to report any offshore income. That's why if we set up in the offshore, apart from just now you mentioned secrets, all those things, let's say Switzerland, I think is still lose to others in respect of the opening of account. but it is still very good in the asset protections through the trust. Yeah.
You mentioned Singapore. I mean, or rather, we have been talking about Singapore. I use the word private banking.
Yeah.
But in reality, many people may not know or may not see Singapore because of its very strong reputation, strong governance and integrity. But how would you consider Singapore? Because a lot of people have also put money there and hoping that their confidentiality and information would not be known, just like some of these countries.
In fact, not to mention only Singapore, a lot of other, as we mentioned earlier about Hong Kong, all those things, UAE is a good offshore account as well, But Singapore is near to us. It's easy to open up a bank account over there, There are two types, Let's say if you are the high net worth, I still remember a lot of Singapore banker used to come to Malaysia and get the high net worth open up accounts in Singapore. And then Singapore also is very good. If you open up there, they are very good in what invest your money through the so-called mutual fund or set up the trust in the Singapore. That is not only you put the money over there, but nowadays actually you have a country by country reporting. If you put your money in Singapore, open a bank account. If you open up in Hong Kong account, if you put up the application forms, they will ask you where is your tax resident. If you put your tax resident in Malaysia, then they will ask you what is your tax file number. So I think that one is that means this jurisdiction in Malaysia or whatever, they can have the right that means to search or get the information from this so-called foreign bank or offshore bank. Yeah.
In ASEAN, is Vietnam offering such facilities? Is it correct?
Vietnam offered as well. It's not as famous as what we know as Singapore, because Vietnam, you see, open up an offshore account or you open up an offshore trust account. There is one particular reason we didn't discuss just now is the stability of the government.
I see. Okay.
The politics,
right.
Because let's say I still remember. Let's say if you have a very unstable governments in certain country, they will open up a bank account. Let's say a lot Indonesians, they open up a bank account in Singapore. That's such a reason, Then some things like that. Last time Cyprus as well, So I think Vietnam, they do offer this one, but not many of us. A lot of people high net worth would like to put their money in Vietnam. Vietnam's trying to do something. Actually, because if you have this good offshore account in your particular country, you also attract, for instance, company set up, offshore company, foreign direct investment. I think that is the purpose of such jurisdictions to have such account.
Yes. Yeah. In the case of Vietnam, I suppose because that while it offers political stability, the kind of legal system is still unknown compared to Singapore and elsewhere.
To me, and River is in such, not super yet.
Yeah. If you want to challenge any issues, then it'd be very hard in the court of law in Vietnam compared to other countries.
You have to set up the arbitrations. All of us in ASEAN, if you sign an agreement, you set up arbitration center in Singapore.
Okay, just to go back a bit, I've heard of stories where some of the companies they are set up in the UK, for example, and they have offshore accounts in Cayman or Virgin Island. They told me that sometimes they have to fly there to have a meeting and then fly back immediately. They have a meeting at the airport and then come back immediately on a private jet. Is that correct?
That one, no idea whether correct or not. Because you see, a company. For instance, we talk about onshore first, like Malaysia. If you want to have a company, the company they also like a human, like I call it a legal person, a company. Whether you are tax resident in onshore Malaysia or you are tax resident somewhere else, in order to become a tax resident, you are not like a person. You cannot say you register a company over here, you're having a registered office over here, that means you are a tax resident over here. Depend on what? Depend on the meeting, the director meeting. If your director meeting or your annual general meeting in that particular country, I think they will be considered a tax resident in a particular country. Just now, as RealChunWai you mentioned, if you go over to the UK for the meeting, perhaps they want to be seen the company is a UK residence company, some things like that. Yeah.
Now, here we've been talking about money, putting money in offshore accounts. Does it also, what happens if it includes assets? For example, paintings, expensive paintings. Suddenly somebody somebody have given me this Picasso painting, big painting. I don't want people to know in Malaysia it's not very safe. It's worth a lot of money. I do not have an explanation as to how I got these paintings. Does offshore accounts take assets like paintings of jewelry? Do they take it?
I think so. It's not the account. If my understanding is that you set up the trust in the offshore, they will put this asset into the trust. That means the trust owning this asset. Let's say very valuable or expensive. Because why? I think all this is due to the capital gain tax. Capital gain tax.
Yes.
Because in UK you have a capital gain tax. If you don't want to be since to be UK to be subject to capital gain tax, you can set up an offshore account. Then there's no capital gain tax. But for Malaysia, definitely there's no difference because we do not have a capital gain tax to tax on this so-called valuable article and a piece of art. However, if you have a piece of let's say very expensive, you need to explain where is your source of income in order to acquire this piece of art. That is a more I think that question is much more relevant than rather where do I do the tax planning in that part. If we are in this jurisdiction like a Singapore, like a Malaysia, like a Hong Kong, if you don't have capital gain tax.
So where does this discussion of accounts offshore, where does it leave Labuan? What does Labuan offers, which is different from others?
I think Labuan is offered the same. When we set up this Labuan International Business and Financial Center, we are trying, Malaysia government is trying to have this offshore to any others in the world, similar, to have this. But Malaysia, as a Malaysians, you also can open up account in Labuan, but it's not in ringgit Malaysia. It must have a foreign currency. You also can acquire or set up an asset management company over there to do this business, to let's say to manage other people asset, and trust over there. Some things like that is I think it's quite similar. The only thing that our execution is it strong, or our these jurisdictions of Labuan is it well known? That one is beside the stories and another chapter to discuss.
Okay, because that not too many people talk about Labuan compared to so
everybody talk about Singapore
so it doesn't stir excitement.
Even though the currency is 1-to-1 to Singapore.
Yes, correct. Now, trying to understand this further. Obviously, that all these offshore accounts are really not the issue, of course, because if you read the media, it becomes very sensational. It becomes very sensational because of the personalities involved. A huge amount. We're talking about trillions here. The accounts, there's nothing wrong. There's no problem with these offshore companies. But the question is how you derive your wealth. And that is the issue. Why is somebody from Russia able to send so much money now? But the question here is, yes, having these offshore companies and offshore account is one thing, but how does one transfer money out of the country, whether illegally or legally? Do one have got to seek an approval from, say, Bank Negara if it's the case of Malaysia?
Oh, obviously. You see, this one is a banking question. A banker will answer you much better. Actually, from the practice, let's say I talk about let's say we want to have one chunk of money from the overseas to invest in Malaysia. Where do you receive this money? You also need a Bank Negara clearance, the ECM exchange control. The clearance. Where is this money come from? Because we are afraid bank negara also afraid. Afraid of what? This money laundering. This one is a terrorism. This one Malaysia cannot afford to fall into this category. If you want to send money to overseas, you also need to fill up the form. For example, if you are the company or person, you receive money. You have to fill out the borang all those things, because it is a hot money disclosures to the bank. This is the normal procedures. If you have export import, that one is different story. That means you receive is a considerations of the goods and services that you rented. That one is another piece of documents to be disclosed. If your pure money in and out, I think that will be frozen, and then unless you have proper explanations to the source of the fund.
So that explains why, like in some countries where you have these big dictators, these drug lords, they can sort of like shift their money out of the country without having to answer their central banks, because they are so powerful. I suppose that this is the illegal outflow of funds. And of course, in these offshore companies, do they act on the basis of no question asked? Where you get your money is none of my concern. It is your country's concern. Is that correct?
I think so. So. If you look at you see a lot of these offshore banking account, they don't ask where is this source of fund. However, because at the time that we are discussing this one, we know that so many people have been leaked out, all these leakages, So I think there are some jurisdiction also they are very cautious. They will ask, if you open up a bank account, if you have a fund coming in, they will ask where is the source of the fund. It's no longer like those days. Those days that they don't ask, just silent, and keep quiet of all this source of fund. I think they will ask as well. Yeah.
These offshore accounts can of course be made under the name of a company or an individual, right?
Yeah.
So if let's just say that I'm a dictator, I'm super rich, I've run out of names to put in. I've got this 12-year-old or 10-year-old grandson. Can I put their name in Virgin Island, and would they accept it?
I think so. I think so. But they don't put in such a way. They will put it in the trust. They will put it in the trust. Then they can change that. They do not need to change whatever in the trust. They can change the beneficiaries. So I think all these things is what is a demand and supply. If there's such a demand, I think a lot of island may come up. Maybe a lot of man-made island.
No, I want to come to the question of this is where many salaried workers, they are not rich. They may have earned some very good income over the years, as a CEO. So as a CEO of a company, the company and the board decides to make some decisions, and they decided that they're going to open some of these offshore companies, and then that everyone has voted. It's been set up, and sometimes some of these names appear in the books as because you're a CEO down there. So some few years later, your name gets revealed. Oh, RealChunWai is CEO of this company. Oh, got offshore account. But it's really not your money, and this is where you have what is massive headache of having to explain sometimes things that you have not even remember. What happens in these cases where a company has put your name there, but you have moved on to other company, if you have moved on to other job? As a CEO of then, what would you recommend to CEOs who may be caught in such predicament?
Actually, if let's say Junmai, you are the CEO of that particular company, just normal. We don't talk about opening bank account onshore, offshore. Any decisions that you make, definitely CEO that is on the pyramid. You are on the top. However, any decisions that you make apart from the CEO, as a very high management staff, you also seek a board decisions. You are not the company. The company, how's the company? As we mentioned at the beginning of these sessions, because a company is a legal person, but it cannot make decision like a human being. That means it's a board decisions. If the board decision is above, let's say above the board, that is a shareholder decision. like no one. That's why you need the AGM, you need the EGM. That's why as a CEO, if you have state down the requirements very clearly, that means at this juncture, that means at this let's say amount or whatsoever threshold, you have to seek the board approval. That means there's a
Right.
board approval. How is it? There is a board resolutions. So I don't think so is a CEO, but the
Yeah.
CEO is the person represent the board to go and
Yeah.
execute. That's why your name, ChunWai, your name will be there, appear there. Perhaps I think
Okay.
something's like that. Yeah.
Right. Now, looking through your accountant, looking through the media reports and looking at some of the statements that have been made, what do you think that is you felt that it is lacking, or you think that people may not quite understand, or even journalists do not quite understand what they have been doing? What was it that struck you when you read through these reports?
Actually, when we read through all these reports, you see, from I still remember the Panama leak. That report will enlighten us before this Pandora, all those things. This sort of report, actually, to me, as you see, ChunWai, you are the former the Greek reporter. What do you report? You report on what? You see, a lot of people like to read negative rather than what is positive.
Yeah.
That's why when a lot of people when they read when I read this one, I'm trying to find out who's inside. You see,
Yeah. Yeah.
who's inside.
Sensational.
Yeah, what is the name inside? Which
Yeah. Yeah.
country.
Yeah. 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 Yeah.
That's why we have the mind that the person who opened up the offshore account, they have done something wrong. Actually,
Yeah.
not so.
Correct.
Not
Correct.
so.
Yeah. So.
Because as we mentioned just now, you open up an offshore account. For instance, if I go to Hong Kong for listing, the board resolutions open up an account and an offshore company in PBI and Cayman Island. I am not wrong. That is the company structures for tax
Correct.
planning, for easy share transfer in futures. It depends on the original idea or original intention. What is this person? Why you need an offshore account? Why you need an offshore investment company or offshore trust? I think basically is boils down to this intention. Yeah.
I think it comes to the point of financial literacy here, which I think is quite lacking still in Malaysia. As an accountant, okay, some of this, well, the media has make it sensational, and when they hear offshore companies, immediately, as you said, that they only think of criminality and how how what they call it, or perhaps that their funds have been their assets have been obtained illegally. How can the press, for example, okay, I mean, we are all guilty in some way or another in playing this sensation. What can we do? I mean, the reasons why I did this program was because like you, I mean that I've got some years as a CEO, and of course I've read quite a bit of financial reports. Okay, so I also felt that look, it was not quite correctly. The perspective was not properly presented. Now, what do you think that we as in the media should do to improve a better understanding of such offshore companies? What can be done?
Okay, you see, the way that we report, actually we report as a news, as we mentioned, who is inside, and then actually there are two questions, always the reporter, who is inside, what is the amount? This is everybody got an interest because we are not the person inside. We don't have that amount. That's why we are interested to know. That's why media will write all these things. I think the media first thing got to understand what is offshore. Offshore doesn't mean that it is not a good thing. You see, because we got onshore, we got offshore. Because the world, especially now, is a borderless. And then, especially now, say post-pandemic, in future, you got digital banking. You do not need to go to particular jurisdictions. You can do all whatever your transactions. That one is not known by any others. Perhaps you have to do a self-assessment or self-reporting. So I think the media have to analyze the offshore account. Actually, there is a good thing for a tax planning. Because if you are the Malaysians, you are in Malaysia, the tax planning is very different from a person in Australia. Also for a person is a very different from if they reside in this UAE, it's different because they have a different taxations. For instance, nowadays we are very hot topic talking about the transfer pricing. You see, this transfer pricing rules, it catches a lot of people and then the company when because you need to transfer the fund no matter how. If you don't want the loan from the bank, company A as a groups of company, you will transfer to company B when the company B needs money. That transfer you have to report. You see, you have to report. If you use an offshore company or offshore accounts to transfer, maybe they are much better. You see, because the fund is captured there. Another interesting thing, why I need an offshore bank account, especially the Japanese, they like to set up or German, they like to set up an offshore account because in their country it's a negative interest. Negative interest. They put in the offshore account. Actually, they earn much better, without doing anything. They earn much better. Actually, they earn much better than our EBF account. You see, so I think the media got to for a form of education to educate. Actually, it's nothing wrong. You can if Malaysia can do let's say we revive the Labuan, can be a very good offshore for the rest of the world as well. I think media should do some things like that. Actually, not to say negative report.
I come to a point also that I think that our interest rate in Malaysia for savings is also almost very low. Very low. Very sad story. But no reason to keep it in our onshore banks, so to speak.
That's right. That's why during the during the last year, 2020, April to this September, what happened? Because we have this so-called this loan moratorium. You do not need to pay your loan. You also have this so-called wages subsidy program. So a lot of companies got the money. Where are they? Where the money go? They go all to the stock. They buy stock. They don't keep the money in the bank. They go buy stock because they feel that the stock give them a higher return than the bank interest, as you mentioned just now.
Correct.
So we are freely move our money. If your money is legitimate, you know where it's coming, you have pay your taxes. That's how the world of the money moves.
Okay, one last question, which is not quite related to offshore companies, but I think it's a general question in the sense that many Malaysian taxpayers complain that the number of people paying taxes are so low. For a country of 32 million. I can't remember exactly what's the number. I think you probably know. The number of taxpayers in this country is really low for individual, okay? And that you have a country that's 32 million. So the structure is not really properly defined. And of course, we tried to have this GST, we would have a better net, a better, larger, wider net. But of course, we lost it because of during the general election, the government of Barisan National Government lost it. And now we have problem of trying to raise tax. The problem with raising tax is that the government gives the impression, the perception is that the government keeps on going after the same taxpayers. So taxpayers feel a bit of, they felt a bit unfair that they get being called all the time. What is your feeling on this subject?
It's a very big subject.
We need another 40 minutes.
You look at this. Just now you mentioned the personal tax. We look at Malaysia, 32 million populations, but our labor force is only about 15.6 to 15.8. It depends on this unemployment rate. Now it's about 750 unemployed, 750,000. So I think it's 15.6, 15.8. However, individual tax, registered taxpayer is only about 2 point something million.
It's quite frightening.
It's very low. It's very low.
2.5 million people having to support 30 million people.
That is how you imagine. That means if you say 2 million, divide by the 32 million, it's only about 6%. That means 10% at home, only 1 or 2% working, to support the rest of the 8. Something like that. Why is it like that? Because we have a registered taxpayer is a lot. Registered taxpayer is a lot. It's about 7.5 million to 8 million registered taxpayer. But to pay tax, I think it's around 2 million, plus and minus. Okay, why is it like that? Because Malaysia has a lot of personal tax relief.
Yeah.
You look at the Malaysians' personal tax relief is very long. When you work it out, you do not need to pay taxes if you earn an income about 3,500 a month. You do not need to pay. So the anyone who earn about 3,500 and below, they do not need to pay a single tax. That's why only a handful, let's say taxpayer, individual paying their tax and all. But paying how much? Is paying about about 30 over B, per 30 over B per annum. Company tax is about 60p, if I'm not wrong. The figures are 60 over B. Because a total revenue, we are going to have a budget announcement. Total revenue of Malaysia, if you say let's say last year budget 2021, maybe announced 2021. The biggest budget is about 322.5 B. About, you see, you look at where is the money come from. In fact, almost 55% of the money is come from direct tax and indirect tax. But amongst the indirect tax and direct tax, almost 73%, 70 to 73% is come from direct tax. That's right. The no more GST, it becomes very low indirect tax. That's why Malaysia will have this so-called imbalance about how are we going to increase our revenue if the oil price is not $80 today.
Correct. So we have a situation where it's going to be pretty tough as we look at over the last 2 years because of COVID-19. Revenue of most companies have taken a beating. Many companies have shut down, and that which means less tax to be collected by the government. And M40 has slid down. Some said it's no longer B40, but B50.
B50.
Yes. Oh my God. So okay, Mr. Koong, thank you so much for joining this discussion. It's really good to learn from someone like you who knows the subject well. We hope to have more of this discussion. Thank you, Mr. Koong.
Thank you.
And for Malaysians and viewers around the world, if you like such discourse, intelligent and civil discourse, please like, share, and please press the subscribe button. Come and join us again for more of this discussion. Thank you. Good night, everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you.